Connected to 1 plus 3G. Connected to 1 plus 3G.
Morning chanting, page 2. Samma त्रिरत्न वंदना हंतमयम रतन तय प्रणाम गाथा यो चीर संबी परिकीर्तन पाठन च प्रणामसे बुद्धो सुशुद्धो करुणामहन्नवो यो चन्त शुद्ध भरज्ञानलोचनो वन्दामि बुद्धम् अहम् आदरेण तं धम्मोपदीपो वियतस्य सद्गुणो यो मग्गपाकामतभेदभिन्नको लोकुत्तरो यो च तदत्तदीपनो वन्दामि धम्मम् अहम् आदरेण तं सङ्घो सुखेताभ्यतिखेतसंज्ञितो यो दिट्ठसन्तो सुगतानुबोधको दोलप्पहीनो अरियो सुमेधसो वन्दामि सङ्घम् अहम् आदरेण तं पुण्यं मया यममम सबुपद्दवा माहोन्तु ते तस्य प्रभवसिद्धय तथागतो लोके उपन्नो अर्हं समासम्भुतो धम्मो च देशितो नियानिको उपशमिको परिनिब्बानिको सम्बोधगामी सुगत पवेदितो मयन्तं धम्मं श्रुत्वा एवं जानाम जातिपि दुःखा जरापि दुःखा मरणमपि दुःखं सुख परिदेव दुःख दो मनुष्य उपायासापि दुःखा अप्रियेहि संप्रयोगो दुःखो प्रियेहि विप्रयोगो दुःखो यमपि इच्छं न लभति तमपि दुःखं संकीर्तेन पञ्चुपादानखण्डा दुःखा सेयथीदं रूपोपादानखण्डो वेदनोपादानखण्डो संज्ञो उपादानखण्डो संघार उपादानखण्डो विज्ञान उपादानखण्डो ये संपरिज्ञाय धर्मानो सुभगवा एवं बहुलं सावके विनेति एवं भागा च पनस्य भगवतो सावकेषु अनुशासनी बहुला भवत्प्रति रूपम् अनित्यं वेदना अनित्या संज्ञा अनित्या संखारा अनित्या विज्ञानम् अनित्यं रूपम् अनत्ता वेदना अनत्ता संज्ञा अनत्ता संखारा अनत्ता विज्ञानम् अनत्ता सब्बे संखारा अनित्या सब्बे धम्मा अनत्ताति मयम् ऊति नाम जातिया जरा मरणेन सुखे हि परिदेवेहि दो मनस्येहि उपायासेहि दुःखोद्विग्ना दुःखपरीता अप्येव नाम इमस्य केवलस्य दुःखकन्दस्य अन्तक्रिया पय्यायेकाति चिरपरिनिभृतमपि भगवन्तं शरणं गता धम्मं च संघं च तस्य भगवतो शासनं यथा सति यथा बलं मनसि करोम अनुपटिपजाम सासानोपटिपत्ति इमस्य केवलस्य दुःखकन्दस्य अन्तक्रियाय संवदतु।
जय मंगल 28 सुनेंगे। बुद्धानुस्मृति की थी, उसके लिए बहुत हेल्पफुल है, क्योंकि 8 उसमें कहानियाँ दी गई हैं भगवान के जीवन की, जो उनके गुणों को दिखाती हैं, विभिन्न गुणों को। अगर हमें ये दृष्टांत याद हो तो बुद्धानुस्मृति करने में बहुत मदद मिलती है। विद्याचरण संपन्न गुण है, उसको भी याद करें ना आदमियों को। विद्याचरण संपन्न, किस तरह से आचरण से उन्होंने अपना धर्म के अनुकूल आचरण किया, किस तरह से
मतलब हर एक को इन्होंने, जैसे हर एक किसी को दान के माध्यम से, किसी को खंती
के माध्यम से कहा जाता है। मुख्य बात है कि उनका आचरण ऐसा है जो धर्म विद्याचरण संपन्न पुरुष धर्म सारथी। किस तरह का पुरुष, किस तरह का मनुष्य, उसको वो कैसे किस तरीके से उसको कंट्रोल करना जानते थे।
Connected to 1 plus 3G.
प्रवचन कैसे होगा?
ये तो मेरे मोबाइल से नहीं चलेगा।
तुम उसमें ट्रांसफर
जब तक आप प्रवचन ट्रांसफर कर दो।
आसान नहीं है। करेंगे और we'll listen to the reflection by Jan Sumedo. This Bluetooth speaker has got some problems, so you may have to raise your volume because I am playing it from the phone. The title is Take Your Stand on Awareness.
Occasion reflect. Witness, rather than the person, the personality, the doer, the thinker, the seer, the hearer, the taster, the smeller, the feeler. Usually the ego depends on a sense of a separate self, of our individuality. We're the doers, the seers, the thinkers. We see everything in terms of the limitation of the human form that we have, the body. We see thinking as a kind of personal ability, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. But in this reflective style, instead of assuming, because it's an assumption you make that you are this mortal limited form, that's an assumption you make. It's not Dhamma, that's not the way it is. It's what we tend to believe. But now we're coming from the awareness level, sati sampatanya, sati panya, intuitive awareness, wisdom. So at first, like on this retreat, the main point of it is to plant this seed in your minds, to encourage you to question, what am I really, Because we operate from habit patterns of just assumptions, beliefs that we've acquired, all limitations. And the Buddhist approach, when he sat under the Bodhi Tree in Bodh Gaya, he'd been an ascetic for 6 years, and according to the scriptures outdid all his teachers in meditation practices and samatha concentration practices. But still, in concentration practices such as samatha, we're going out towards objects and concentrating on objects that we see or think. We can do mantras, chanting, kasinas, all kinds of ways of developing samadhi or concentration practices that are tranquil, refined, pleasant. But the basic delusion has not been erased, has not been confronted in any way. And this is what the ascetic Gautama at that time, why He went off by himself from his colleagues, from his friends, and then this symbol of sitting under the Bodhi tree. And reflecting on the way it is. So sitting under the Bodhi tree is a symbol, a metaphor for being aware, not trying to concentrate on an object anymore, but just open attention, awareness of the way it is. And so in the scriptures, all the forces of Mara came to delude him. And they have pictorial images of everything that is deluding, attractive, or frightening, coming to ascetic Gautama, tempting, trying to convince him. Contemplate our ability to be the witness, rather than the person, the personality, the doer, the thinker, the seer, the hearer, the taster, the smeller, the feeler. Usually the ego depends on a sense of the separate self, of our individuality. We're the doers, the seers, the thinkers. We see everything in terms of the limitation of the human form that we have, the body. We see thinking as a kind of personal ability, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. But in this reflective style, instead of assuming, because it's an assumption you make that you are this mortal limited form. That's an assumption you make. It's not Dhamma, that's not the way it is. It's what we tend to believe. But now we're coming from the awareness level, sati sampatanya, sati panya, intuitive awareness, wisdom. So at first, like on this retreat, the main point of it is to plant this seed in your minds, to encourage you to question, what am I really, Because we operate from habit patterns of just assumptions, beliefs that we've acquired, all limitations. And the Buddhist approach, when he sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, he'd been an ascetic for 6 years, and according to the scriptures outdid all his teachers in meditation practices and samatha concentration practices. But still, in concentration practices such as samatha, we're going out towards objects and concentrating on objects that we see or think. We can do mantras, chanting, kasinas, all kinds of ways of developing samadhi or concentration practices that are tranquil, refined, pleasant. But the basic delusion has not been erased, has not been confronted in any way. And this is what the ascetic Gautama at that time, why he went off by himself from his colleagues, from his friends, and then this symbol of sitting under the Bodhi tree. And reflecting on the way it is. So sitting under the Bodhi tree is a symbol, a metaphor for being aware, not trying to concentrate on an object anymore, but just open attention, awareness of the way it is. And so in the scriptures, all the forces of Mara came to delude him. They have pictorial images of everything that is deluding, attractive, or frightening, coming to the ascetic Gautama, tempting, trying to convince him of the illusory conditioned realm. But he witnessed it. And this is what we're going through on this retreat, is the illusions of Mara, the thoughts you have, the fears, the emotions that arise, the memories that come and go. And you're taking the Buddha position under the Bodhi tree of awareness. What arises ceases, like all the forces of Mara. If they come, they go. They're impermanent. They have no real substance, no kind of heart or core reality. They're not permanent beings or conditions. So they're sankharas, conditions, phenomena. They arise and cease, they come and go. So when you let things go, let everything go, what doesn't go is awareness. So the emotions, happy emotions, inspired or depressed, doubting, confused, angry, greedy, these are mental states, emotional states that come and go. And you're taking the position of Bhutto, the witness of the presence and absence of Mara. So the word Mara is a Pali word for these delusions. And then as a Bhutto witness, you're not these delusions. It's like taking this Bhutto position, your relationship to the emotions you're experiencing, to the thoughts, the memories, physical sensations. You're saying, this is not what you are. You can say to yourself, I'm not this, Mara. Or in the scriptures, they translated, the Buddha would say, I know you, Mara. So it's this knowing. It's not getting rid of Mara or killing Mara. Trying to get rid of Mara, it's I know you. I know what you are. You're a condition, you're a sankhara. So this is knowing, and I said before, the consciousness, it's its whole function is knowing. It's not knowing about things. It's not a discriminating knowing about what's right or wrong, good or bad. It's knowing. It's like this. Maras are like this. Greed, hatred, delusion come and go. They're like this. But you remain the witness, the Bhutto, observing the presence and the absence. So like anger arises, you're aware of the presence of anger is like this. I know you, Mara. And then anger ceases, and the absence of anger is like this. So the stability, the unshakability of consciousness, of mindfulness, is your real refuge. You know, that's what you can always trust or depend on, no matter what is happening internally in your mind or externally in the worldly conditions as they move and change according to other conditions. So like on this retreat, the encouragement of noble silence because it is a superb opportunity to cultivate, to experiment with this way. This is not a social occasion. We're not here to entertain each other or socialize, but to support each other in this endeavor to be, to see things in a different way than the usual self-centered, worldly, conditioned way that we tend to view ourselves, the people around us, the world we live in. So like this sense of planting seeds, it's a challenge. What I'm saying, the way I talk, the teaching, is a challenge to the worldly view. The worldly view, modern life, is I'm a separate individual, in a world of material objects that are separate from me. And the materialist view of life is always in believing that material is our reality. The material world is the real world. And then the assumption that consciousness comes out of the material world. First there's the planet, the material, the rocks, the mountains, and so forth, and then consciousness comes out of that. That is merely theory. That is hearsay. That cannot be proven in any way. And yet, modern attitudes, modern civilizations operate from that belief unquestioningly. So you read in news or in magazines about scientists or psychologists trying to figure out what consciousness is. Can you define it? Is it in the brain? Is it the brain that is the center of consciousness? Can consciousness appear and arise out of rocks and mountains and planet Earth, the sun and moon? Is consciousness just some kind of thing that comes after the material realm that we see, that we can visually observe, which seems very solid and firm, where consciousness is what we are, but we've never investigated it. We've never looked at it in any way other than just in personal terms. Like my cultural conditioning of being American in my generation was very much one based on the importance of being an individual, self-expression, my personal rights. Brought up with this idea of I have rights as a individual person. Individuality was highly praised, to be a special person. Even though the ideal is that we're all equal, everybody's equal, but you want to be special more than equal. So equality is an ideal, and then the message you get through your parents, through the society, through your education is, trying to be special. You're not trying to be equal, you're trying to be the winner or get the prize or the best. Or then you can't be the best, then you're the loser. So these are all thoughts and images that we create through these assumptions that all I am is this form based on ideals of equality, but the reality of social conditioning is not about trying to be equal, but trying to be better than somebody else. Self-expression, unique qualities, individuality. Now these kind of attitudes, they're inculcated into us. We're not born with these assumptions. But when we're born, we're conscious. Newborn babies fully conscious. It doesn't think of itself as an individual or a boy or a girl. Consciousness has no gender. It's not about individuality or being special. Consciousness is not special. Some people have better consciousness or more of it than others. That's thinking again. That's dividing, separating, making it complicated. But just the reality of here and now, knowing you're conscious. Do you need a psychologist or a scientist to tell you what consciousness is? Do you need to read it in a dictionary, a definition of consciousness, or what Freud or Jung or scientists of the past or the Greek philosophers, or do we need to define consciousness, what other people have said about it? We can see scientists as being, experts, researching, looking, but modern scientists are always looking outward towards objects. So they examine the material world, and when they try to examine consciousness, how do you do that when that's what you are? You need to find it. Is it an object that you can, verify? Is it, how do you know it's, can you prove that consciousness is limited to your brain? Or that it is limited to your form inside your physical body, the form of your body? When we experience consciousness, the senses operate through consciousness. So when we see objects, they're in consciousness. So the bodies are in consciousness. The objects that we see, the objects of the senses, are in consciousness. This you can realize. You're not making it up. You're just investigating for yourself to look at it from this point, here and now. You know you're conscious. The senses, when we, operate through consciousness. But the senses themselves are not conscious independently. It's like like light, the sunlight. Because our senses can deteriorate, like vision or hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We can become paralyzed. In old age, I find my senses fading away. Vision's not very good. Like I can see the ones in the front row. I can tell who they are. But beyond that, I can't see features at a distance. I have to have eye injections every 6 weeks to keep my left eye from going blind. This is the limitation of eyes, aren't they? They're sankharas. Are you your eyes, or we don't we want a perfect vision until we die at 100 years old. The ego, in a sense, wants to be perfectly healthy and die at 100. But that's wishful thinking, because sankharas are subject to change. They're not perfect. Their nature is imperfect. They arise and cease, they begin and end, they develop, and then they degenerate. That's the nature of sankharas. But what isn't sankhara is consciousness. So hearing is sankhara. You find yourself have to wear hearing aids now in order to hear people. The hearing, as you get older, the senses lose their accuracy. The body gets all kind of wrinkled and frail. And that's the nature of it. What doesn't get wrinkled and frail or lose its ability is consciousness. Or awareness. So consciousness, awareness, mindfulness, they're all the same thing. Dhamma, apparent here and now. Things arise and cease in consciousness, so you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Happen, but they're all, as you take the Puto position, the awareness position, the witnessing position of Puto, then you observe the changingness. And most of us, before we met Buddha Dhamma, never witnessed, even though we experienced change all from the beginning of our lives to the point where before we encountered Buddha's teaching, never thought of things in terms of all sankharas are impermanent. We went to university educations and so forth, taking psychology courses, and nobody ever mentions all conditions are impermanent. So there's this assumption, that happiness depends on finding conditions that are permanent stability, permanent love relationship, permanent lifestyle that won't change, that your life will be, if you have a lot of money, permanent amount of money in the bank, you'll be happy. The idea that wealth is impermanent, self is impermanent, senses are impermanent. And what is aware at this very moment, what is aware of impermanence is awareness. So the Buddha called his teaching the handful of leaves. Now he's taking just a handful of leaves to be able to know what all the leaves in the forest are like. So if we think we can count all the leaves in the forest, that'd be a total waste of a lifetime, wouldn't it? Because we couldn't keep track. We don't need to know all the sankharas that exist, that arise and cease, in their different manifestations, qualities. Just the sankharas that we're experiencing, the bodies that are sitting here, is enough to know. Because sankharas all have the same characteristic, anicca, dukkha, anatta. They're impermanent, they're unsatisfactory, they're not self. So to know what leaves are in a forest, you just pick up a handful, and then there's 5 or 6 leaves. That's enough to understand the nature of leaves. So this is where the Buddha's teaching is one, as I've said before, he made it very simple for us. Because before, as a personality, I would be foolish enough to try to count all the leaves in the forest. Like acquiring endless knowledge. This is an information age. Through the internet, through technology, we can acquire information easily just on an iPad or a computer. But there's no end to it, is there? It's like trying to count all the leaves in the forest. To acquire all the knowledge, worldly knowledge, is impossible for any of us. But real knowledge is awareness. That's the knowing the way it is. This is intuitive knowing. It's not knowing about what leaves look like or all the information you can acquire through the internet or through modern education. That's acquired knowledge. That's not knowing. It's knowing about. You can know about art, history, science, psychology. But the reality of our lives is that this knowing isn't knowing about, it's here and now, it's mindfulness. And if we stop just trying to know about everything that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, and feel, and start observing the way it is, then we begin to know all conditions are impermanent. It isn't just a belief, some kind of Buddhist must believe that all conditions are impermanent. It's not a doctrine. The three characteristics of conditioned phenomena, isn't it? Trilakkhana. Three characteristics of everything that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think is impermanent. Anicca, impermanent, dukkha, unsatisfactory, anatta, non-self. In English grammar and so forth, it lends itself to Dhamma explanations because, like, being the knowing is mindfulness, not becoming a knower. Trying to think of ourselves as a knower. Consciousness is mind and it's knowing, then it still has this sense of individuality, of separation. But knowing is the reality of this moment. There's knowing, isn't it? You're knowing what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're hearing. It's like this. It's not knowing about it, it's not analyzing, judging, rationalizing, explaining. It's just pure, unadulterated knowing is consciousness. So that's why asking you if you're conscious, you know immediately you are. That's not a personal ability, it's not like, because each one of us, if I asked each one of you in this room if you're conscious, everyone would have to say yes, because that's direct knowing. It's not because you're a personality or a separate person. To create the separation, you have to think. I remember in my experience of practice years ago, I kept thinking if I stop thinking, where does Ajahn Sumedho arise and cease? Is Ajahn Sumedho 24/7? Is Ajahn Sumedho, when he's asleep in his kuti, is he still Ajahn Sumedho? Because these are words that you're given these names. So I just, reflecting on this. When I'm asleep in my kuti, am I still Ajahn Sumedho? Or when I'm not thinking I'm Ajahn Sumedho, am I still Ajahn Sumedho? Then I began to have insight into realizing the name that one uses is acquired knowledge. what remains constant is awareness. And then the names, whether it's a Christian name, I was given the name Robert is before I became a Buddhist. But that was something given to me. I had no choice. My parents chose it. So is that what I am, a name? Am I Robert or Ajahn Sumedho? I've recently acquired a new name. These names are, they're all quite nice. I don't know aversion to any of them. But is that really what I am? And then I began to see how I create myself, the sense of my self-importance. You have a title called Ajahn or something like that. And, usually you don't get called Ajahn until you have 10 pansas. And so this identity with these titles, being a professor or a doctor, being somebody special, how the ego, grasps these titles, these roles in society. But what is our real nature is awareness that doesn't have a title. But it's the reality that we're experiencing here and now. And it's not personal. It's not like separate, my consciousness, your consciousness. Unless we believe that, we can think that I have a separate consciousness from Ajahn the so-called. And so then that's a thought, isn't it? I'm thinking, I create that, his consciousness is personal and my consciousness is my personality. That's thinking, that's proliferating, called conceptual proliferation. But when there's pure consciousness, it isn't Ajahn and so-called Ajahn Sumedho, it's intuitive awareness, it's Dhamma, it's reality. Same with all of us, we can, through the sensory conditions that we have, like looking out at a room filled with people, with meditators, everything looks separate, because that's what seeing does. It tends to create this sense of the I and the object of the I. So the consciousness kind of seems to go out to the objects, which seem separate. But in ultimate reality, there's no separation. Now this is a more intuitive insight, because when you think about it, you get very confused, because it all seems separate. When visuals seeing you as objects, it's everybody, you all look separate from me. But then you change from seeing, attachment to the assumptions you make through visual observation, through seeing, through sight, to just awareness. And that's unitive. It's not separate, it doesn't separate. The senses separate. When you hear my voice, it's separate from you and something you hear, and so forth. So sensory awareness, sensory consciousness tends to create this materialist view of the world world is separate out there, and oneself as the subject that's separate from the object. In intuitive awareness, there's only the awareness, Dhamma, perfect, complete, here and now. And this is where fear ends, because as long as there's this sense of separateness, individuality, in a vast world, universe out there, then the thinking part and the imagination can create all kinds of scenarios to be frightened. Right now, in just daily news, is very frightening, with climate change and overpopulation and the political confusion that exists everywhere. When we think about the future, it looks pretty grim, like pretty scary. So we imagine a future where we don't see the perfection that exists in the wholeness of Dhamma. So the liberation or enlightenment is realizing the true nature, awakening to reality, awakening to Dhamma. In terms of our relationship to the conditioned realm, to our bodies, to the world, the society that we live in, it's based on wisdom and fearlessness and understanding rather than on separation, love, hate, like, dislike, fear about the future, resentments of the past. And one time when I said Wat Pah Pong in the early years of monastic life, I was sitting in my kuti and I started thinking about things that happened to me 20 years before, and I got very angry. So just by the resentments of previous injustices, unfairnesses of that of your past, you can create anger in the present. And then I reflected, is this anger that I'm experiencing anything to do with the present situation? Luang Por Chah, good teacher, generous lay people, good sangha. And the suffering I was creating, the anger I was experiencing, was based on attachment to memories from the past that happened 20 years before. Suddenly, this is the way to reflect, this is, that kind of anger is neurotic, isn't it? It's not based on anything like somebody is trying to shoot you, or there's a tiger waiting outside your kuti to attack. It's not an immediate threat, but you recognize that how much we suffer through this thinking of resentments. There's a lot to resent in anybody's life. Even though we believe life should be fair, there should be fairness in society and relationships. This idea of fairness is an ideal again. sometimes life is fair, sometimes it's not. You can't demand fairness. You know, it's an ideal, a good ideal. But to anyone's life, no matter how privileged your background is or unprivileged, we have to deal with a lot of unfairness, injustice, things to resent in the present moment, to blame, to feel anger and want to seek revenge, want to get even, or just get caught in angry moods, resentful moods in the present. But in the present moment, there's, this, it's like this, there's awareness. If you're angry, then that is, you're aware of anger as a condition. You don't grasp it, you let it go. If you grasp it, then you become an angry person. But if you leave it alone, or if you're attached to the anger and you see what you're doing, let it go. The insight into the second noble truth is to let go. Let it go, don't hold on, don't grasp it, or don't try to get rid of it. Just relax and let it be, and it ceases. The future is unknown. Tomorrow we assume, we imagine that tomorrow will be very much like today here at Putra Alpha Resort on this retreat and so forth. But tomorrow never comes, is it? It's always here and now. So at this point, when we're conscious, aware here and now, tomorrow is an imagined thing. We imagine, and imagination can take any form. So the future, for the world, for society, for Thailand, for whatever, is we can imagine anything: success, failure, abundance, poverty, war, peace, whatever you imagine, you can project into the future. So the future doesn't ever really happen because it's images that we create in the present. So the present is always where experience is. It's here and now, it's like this. It's the way it is, so it's not, the way it is not a kind of passive resignation. It's not like, well, that's the way it is in a kind of negative state. When we say it's like this, it's not a kind of negative resignation to misery, but it's a recognition at this moment it can only be this way, whatever, your physical body, your emotional experience, your thoughts, memories are like this, they're the way they are, they arise and cease. So Benyang Ni Eng, or the way it is, or it's like this, is not something to, it's a way of thinking that is non-judgmental, but acknowledging at this moment it can only be this way, you can only feel like this. But this awareness, whatever you're feeling, you're aware of a feeling. So take your stand with the awareness rather than with the feeling. This is the whole point of this retreat, for you to see that You're not the feeling, you're not the physical body, you're not the personality, the memory, the emotion. That these conditions come and go and change, like the seasons of the year, the time of day. But what remains constant, unshakable, trustworthy, is here and now, that you don't create or have to get hold of. It's just to recognize the power of mindfulness.
थोड़ी देर ब्रह्म विहार, मैत्री ब्रह्म विहार का अभ्यास करते हैं, जो हमारी मैत्ता चांट है जिसको हम यूज़ करते हैं। मैं उसी को रुक रुक के चांट करूँगा और हम लोग जानते हैं कैसे करना है। सर्वप्रथम अपने लिए मैत्री का भाव, सद्भावना बढ़े हम में, दुर्भावना समाप्त हो, वैर समाप्त हो, मित्रता बढ़े सबसे, चिंता समाप्त हो, सुखपूर्वक जी सकें। सुखी अत्तानंद परिहरा। अब यही शुभकामना अपने प्रियजनों के प्रति, आचार्यों के प्रति, मित्रों के प्रति, सहधर्मचारियों के प्रति। मम माता पितु आचार्या च ज्ञातिमित्ता च सब्रह्मचारिणो च अविराहोन्तु अव्यापञ्जाहोन्तु अनिगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानंद परिहरन्तु। रक्षा देवता, भूमट्ठा देवता, रुक्कट्ठा देवता, आकाशट्ठा देवता, अविराहोन्तु अव्यापञ्जाहोन्तु अनिगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानंद परिहरन्तु। समस्त प्राणियों के प्रति, चाहे किसी भी लोक में हो, किसी भी रूप में हो, किसी भी अवस्था में हो, सूक्ष्म हो, स्थूल हो, छोटे हो, बड़े हो, एक पैर वाले हों, अनेक पैर वाले हों, पृथ्वी पर चलने वाले हों, जल में विचरण करने वाले हों या आकाश में उड़ने वाले हों, इस तरह से समस्त प्राणियों के प्रति मैत्री का भाव। सर्वे सत्ता सर्वे काना सर्वे भूता सर्वे पुंगला सर्वे अत्ता भाव परियापन्ना सर्वा इत्यो सर्वे पुरुषा सर्वे हरिया सर्वे अनरिया सर्वे देवा सर्वे मनसा सर्वे विनिपातिका अविराहोन्तु अव्यापञ्जहोन्तु अनीगाहोन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। इस तरह मैत्री का प्रस्फुटन करके सारे शरीर में स्वतः ही उस भाव को व्याप्त होने देते हैं थोड़ी देर, और फिर सभी दिशाओं में उसको फैलाने का अभ्यास करेंगे। शरीर में व्याप्त होने के लिए भी हम मन में ये दोहरा सकते हैं, याद कर सकते हैं, जिनके प्रति भी मैत्री देना बहुत सुलभ है। सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं परित्वा विहरति तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थम् इति अधो ऊर्ध्वं अधो तिर्यं सम्बधि सम्बद्धताय सम्भावन्ता लोकं मत्ता सहगतेन चेतसा विहरति। एक दिशा में, फिर चारों दिशाओं, 10 दिशाओं में मैत्री की तरंगों को व्याप्त करते हुए, मैत्री के भावों को रखते हुए थोड़ी देर विहार करते हैं, ऐसे देखते हैं। पहले भी निवेदन किया था, दिशाओं में विहार करने में सहूलियत होती है अगर हम हर दिशा में जिन लोगों को हम जानते हैं उनका चित्रण करके उनके प्रति मैत्री का भाव लाएं। रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु मे भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वसङ्गानुभावेन सदा सुखी